Please stand. First, Peter, thank you. You know, I asked Peter if he'd be kind enough to introduce me, not for what he might say, but because I liked the way he looked. But thank you, Peter, for those words as well. They were extraordinary. I would estimate that somewhere between 90 and 95% of the people in this room have absolutely no idea who I am or why the hell I'm up here. I'm speaking directly to those 90 to 95%ers. When I say that I not only understand your bewilderment, I share it completely. But if you'll bear with me for a bit, while I strut and fret my few hours on this stage, I will try to tell you the real story, not the fairy tale you've heard from previous speakers, but the real story of how and why I'm up here tonight. When Peter Alkali called a few months ago to say I'd been chosen to receive the 2011 Michael Mendelson Award along with Wally Shawn, the first thing I said to Peter was, "Is this a joke?" Peter laughed, thinking I was kidding. I wasn't kidding. Absolutely not, Peter said. How could this be, I thought. Was it possible? And then it hit me, I got it. You see, I'd been on the board of the new group for about a dozen years, and about 3 or 4 years ago, thinking it was time for a change, I quit. So it was suddenly plain as day what this was all about. The committee and the board, still pissed off about my escaping, had decided to punish me by making me an honoree and subjecting me to all this outrageously inane hoopla. But Peter quickly quashed that theory as well. Absolutely not, Fred, he said. This isn't a joke, and it isn't about revenge. We all deliberated and voted unanimously to bestow this award on you. I still couldn't believe it. Were they nuts? There had to be some mistake. I was reluctant to accept what the hell had I done to earn this, but in the face of Peter's enthusiastic urgings, I let all my doubts go and said yes. And then something very odd started to happen, something very strange. I began to live into my status as a new group honoree. My posture began to improve. I started to stand up straight. My hapless stride became more forceful. My complexion improved. I even noticed some new hairs growing, where none had been seen since the earliest days of the Nixon administration. And right along with these remarkable physical changes, there were startling psychological ones as well. What I had always believed to be my inescapable fatalism, my lifelong self-denigration, even my ineradicable self-contempt, all these negatives, they all began to fade. I was developing a real sense of entitlement, a feeling of inevitability, a kind of, well, greatness about myself that I had simply never felt before. This must be what a Republican feels like. And along with that realization came an overwhelming, almost irresistible need for a further extension of the Bush-era tax cuts. All this I attributed to my totally unexpected new group honor. Totally undeserved honor, I now saw I totally deserved it. Weeks passed, and as I continued to marvel at my astonishing transformation, I got a message to call Peter Alcala. When I called him back, Peter said, "Hang on a minute, please, Fred." And before I knew it, he plugged in Jeff and Scott, and Bob and Serge, and Ian and James and Christina and Ellen and John and Mimi and Shara and Valerie and Nancy and God knows who else. I remember the many conference calls I'd unfortunately had to suffer through during my life. Yet I couldn't remember ever having so many people calling me at once like this. How unique, and yet how fitting. Then suddenly, before Peter could say anything, the other 80 people on the line all began to chant in unison, "We're sorry, Fred. We're sorry, Fred. We're really, really sorry." What was going on, I wondered? What could have happened? Were they sorry that the gala would be held in such a tiny venue as Capital and not in Yankee Stadium? That the celebration would only last for one night? What on earth could they be apologizing for? Peter interrupted my speculation and finally broke the news. As embarrassed and regretful as they all were about it, I had been right. My selection had been the result of a mistake. As my recently inflated balloon of self-esteem started to leak, Peter went on to tell me that after they had, as a no-brainer, chosen Wally, the committee had been given a list of other potential honorees by the head of development, Oliver Dow. Oliver, where are you? Oliver, please stand up. Let's hear it for Oliver Dow. That list of potentials was 6 pages long. But good old, reliable, loyal, adorable, but unarguably goofy Oliver had somehow given the committee only the last page. To this day, he still doesn't know what happened in the first 5 pages. And yes, as you've probably guessed by now, I was the last name on the list. And the only name on the 6th page. And Oliver had given the committee just that one thing. So, Peter went on, "Fred, I know you'll understand and be a good sport and step aside. And Fred, would you please do so quickly so we can give this award to someone who really deserves it? And also, by the way, so we don't retroactively insult Robin and Derek and Ethan and Wendy and Stephen and Ruth by adding your name to theirs." This was clearly going to be a character-defining moment in my life. I paused to try to gain some perspective on this incredible new twist. I took a deep deep breath and slowly began to enunciate in a very simple, thoughtful, and considered manner. I said, Peter, there is no fucking way you're taking this away from me. And if you dare try to give it to some second-rate non-entity like Mike Nichols or Stephen Sondheim or Arthur McDonald or Frank Whaley or Matthew Broderick, you and the goddamn new group will live to regret it. I promise you, you do not want to see the havoc I will wreak. As hard as it still is for me to believe, as you can see, my bluff worked. So mistake or otherwise, here I am. Thank you for that mistake. Thank you, Scott. You ridiculously talented bastard. Peter, Jeff, Bob, the committee, and Ian and Christina and Mimi and Shara, and I guess Oliver. As well as to everyone who shelled out some cash or credit to come to what you now know is only a semi-legitimate event. And my deepest apologies to Wally and all the prior and future honorees for tainting this award. One final postscript. I do accept this honor, mistaken or otherwise, in wildly fond remembrance of Mike Mendelson, a man who not only in good times but also in the darkest hours in the life of this company, relentlessly kept breathing life back into it. Thank you, Mike, for the life support you gave to the new group, and thank you for the inspiration and spirit you continue to bestow on so many people privileged like me to have known you. It's not too much of a stretch to conclude by saying, you, Mike, are the reason why not just me, but all of us are here tonight. Thank you.
Hear, hear.